Welcome to the King's Report for Wednesday, June 6th, 2018, 9th year of Chungi, the 4th month, and the 23rd day by the heavenly calendar. Tim Elder and Greg Knoll sitting in for the second king of Cheongguk, Hyungjin Moon. Good morning, Greg.
Good morning.
Thank you for coming in.
Oh, my pleasure. Thanks.
It's a bit cool this morning.
It is.
It's, what is it? Still in the 40s, isn't it?
It's got to be. Yeah.
It's 49 degrees in the Cheongguk area. And it's the high temperature today is forecast to be 69 with a variable cloudiness and a possibility of a shower during the day. It's been rather cool the last couple of days. It's a little bit below the normal, but it's a rather nice change from the heat that we had, wasn't it?
Yeah, it's kind of like springtime.
Kind of like springtime. Imagine that. Of course, I guess after Memorial Day, it's kind of unofficial summer, right?
Right.
So,
yeah.
but and next week when we get ready for the day of True All Things, and then the events on Friday, Saturday, and then the Ancestor Liberation on Sunday, it's going to warm up a bit. So Sunday, the Ancestor Liberation Sunday, is going to be in the high 80s.
Okay.
Yeah, that's the forecast. So it's going to be summer then, and then summer again. So anyway, that's where we are this morning in terms of the weather. Let's go to the Rima, Mark 14, verse 23 and 24. And he took the cup when he had given thanks and gave it to them, and they all drank of it. And he said unto them, "This is my blood of the New Testament, which is shed for many." This, of course, is the place where, in the Last Supper, where Jesus is kind of having his last meal with the disciples in his physical body. After the Last Supper is finished, they go to the Garden of Gethsemane, and then while they're there, the Roman soldiers come with Judas Iscariot at the head, and Judas leads them to Jesus, and he kisses Jesus on the cheek to identify Jesus for the Romans, the soldiers, and then they arrest him and take him into custody. And from there, then, the whole events of the crucifixion take place. The trial, the two trials, and the crucifixion, and then following that, the resurrection. So here, Jesus is kind of, I don't know if saying goodbye is the right word, but he is having this sort of last meal with the disciples, and during that meal, he pours wine for them, and he said, "This is my blood of the New Testament, which is shed for many." He took the cup, and when he had given thanks, he gave it to them, and they all drank of it. And this is my blood of the New Testament. I think the value of Jesus' blood, that the blood that he shed on the cross, the value of the blood that True Father has shed for us through his 7 deaths and resurrections, is something that we can never fully realize. And I think the more we understand our own sin, the more we realize the value of that. And we were just talking during the Korean portion of this about how we were talking about the Sanctuary Academy, and apparently the Queen gave a talk on sinfulness, how everyone is a sinner, and so we were talking about how really a lot of second generation don't understand their sinfulness, but and in fact I received an email from someone whose second generation son had passed away, and this person was asking whether it was appropriate to have the son liberated in the Ancestor Liberation ceremony. And the person was saying, well, because the person was a second generation, it would seem that liberation would not be necessary. But I pointed out that we all sin in thought and word and in deed. Second generation are born without original sin, but it's like living in the world is like living in a mud pool, I would say. You're going to get dirty. You're going to get dirty. so yes, we all have sin, and we all have something to repent for, and we all are in need of forgiveness, and we all are in need of the blood of Christ, which pays for our sins, and it's a wonderful, wonderful grace that we are able to, that we have this path. This path has been opened for us by Christ, by Jesus, and by True Father, so that we can receive the forgiveness of our sins. Probably the most difficult person in the world for us to forgive, at least for me, is myself. Even if God forgives me, I still may have a hard time forgiving myself. And if people see themselves only as sinners and are not able to experience the grace of forgiveness, not able to understand the value of the blood of Jesus Christ, the blood of Christ, our True Father, Sun Myung Moon, then they may fall into a kind of a depression, and that may even lead them, in some cases, to suicide, to take their own lives. But it's important that we be able to forgive ourselves and to have that experience.
Yeah, I think one sin that I think all of us have committed, a second generation included, is that we don't really understand Father, and we didn't really understand His value as Christ, and that is really that's really missing the mark, and that's really what sin is all about, is not really seeing things from God's viewpoint. So I think through this tribulation period, whenever the king had to separate from the desecration that was happening, many people didn't understand Father's value. They didn't understand the second king. So I think there's always opportunities to repent. Even if somebody stayed somewhat clean from the fallen world, still there's many things we didn't understand. Yeah.
It's important for us to experience Father as our personal Savior. And I've said this already a few times, but I think behind the failure of the Han Mother is her inability to experience Father as her personal Savior. And that's why, I think that is when she says, "Oh, I'm actually the Messiah. Oh, I was born without original sin, but Sun Myung Moon was born with original sin, and his original sin was cut off when he married me, and he should not have married anyone before he married me." When she makes those statements, I think behind that is, so in the background of that is the fact that she never experienced Father as her personal Savior. And I think that's pretty clear. And that is to me, that is a big sort of difference between Hak Ja Han and our second king, Hyung Jin Moon. That the second king did experience Father as his personal Savior, and he gave that testimony. And that to me is really where the paths really separate. And today, the Family Federation in Korea has become a sect of Korean shamanism, and this is becoming more and more clear every day. There's a photograph that's running around on the blogs in Japan and Korea, recently taken in Korea, where they're performing some kind of a ceremony in Cheongpyeong, and the participants or a participant in that ceremony is dressed up in a kind of a shamanistic or kind of, I guess it's supposed to be Yi Dynasty clothing, but looking at that photograph, it really impresses me that this really has become a sect of Korean shamanism and nothing else. It's not based on the Bible at all. And Messiah comes on the Bible, on the foundation of Christianity.
It's just amazing. The second king is really honors the Bible, and
Yes.
when he speaks in biblical terms, in biblical prophecy, and Old and New and completed Testament is, runs in his blood, and
Yes.
that's a beautiful thing, because that's really the foundation that Father came upon.
Yes. Right, shall we go to the news?
You're going to do Rima with fathers.
Oh, yes. I'm sorry. I was going to do Rima, yes, with the, thank you very much.
That's why I'm here, Tim.
That's on page 1871 of the Cheonsonggyong. This is the book on the Pacific Rim Providence. And the title here is Developing Jeju-do to Become an International Fishing Location is the subheading here. And the first paragraph of that, I have been interested in Jeju-do for 10 years. Jeju-do is a military stronghold and will become a more important place in Asia in the future. Tourism development is an issue, but when it comes to the nation's fate, Jeju-do's ocean location is most important. I don't know if the tech team can show that map again, if that's still available for us. Okay, yeah, if you could show that map to show just the location of Jeju-do in terms of the Korean mainland and also the island of Kyushu, which is the third largest of Japan's islands. You see there, you see the red marker there. It shows you where Jeju-do is. And this is the island that's so off the coast of Korea, and there you can see also the Chinese coast there to the west. So it's at the entrance of the Yellow Sea there that goes up the west side of the Korean Peninsula. It's also the entrance of the the sea between Japan and Korea. And most importantly, I think, strategically, is that if you can zoom in a little bit on Kyushu, in the northwestern part of Kyushu, there is the U.S. 7th Fleet has a large base. It's a Sasebo port. It's kind of on the you could say the shoulder portion of Kyushu. It's in the northwest portion of Kyushu there. Yeah, right about there. Yeah, right, kind of in the center of that. So if, for example, if the Chinese Navy were to have a base on Jeju-do, for example, it would completely cut off the 7th Fleet base at Sasebo in Kyushu. And I'm sure that the Chinese would very much like to have that kind of a position. In fact, today, people say that Chinese have bought up so much land in Jeju Island that, you know, a little bit of exaggeration, just say all that's left is for the Chinese government to declare this is ours. That's a bit of an exaggeration. But you can see that China has a great deal of interest in that island. And Father also, and here he says that it is a military stronghold. That's a bit of a mistranslation. It's a strong, you know, it's a very important place militarily. There is no military. I think finally the Korean Navy I think built a base in Jeju-do recently, last 5 years or so. But traditionally, it has not been a military stronghold, in the sense that there has not been a lot of military presence on Jeju Island. But it is in a very strategically important location, as you can see. So, as Father says, it will have a great importance in the fate of Korea. Now, I've thought sometimes that, you know, if there's going to be another war in the Korean Peninsula, this time it might go from south to north. In 1950, North Korea invaded from the north and tried to reach Busan, right? And they pushed all the South Korean forces down into that little perimeter around Busan in the southeast corner of the peninsula. But this time they might go the opposite way. They might start in the south and work their way north. That would seem to be like one scenario. If I were you know, in the Chinese military or the North Korean military, I might think of that. I might try to see if that was possible. And Jeju Island would be a very important place to get a hold of in that case. During the Korean War, Jeju Island was an important place for refugees. A lot of people who came down from the north went to Jeju Island and lived as refugees there. In fact, I think Reverend Johan Lee, who was a member of the 36 couples, he's how old is he now? I think he may be 100. Yeah. Anyway, he was the first Christian minister to join Father, as far as we know, and he was blessed in the 36 couple blessing. and he was also there on Jeju Island as a refugee during the Korean War. So that is our rima for this morning from the Cheonseongyong. So I think it'd be a good thing to put Jeju Island on your prayer list. I know Father has a great deal of interest in it. He often went hunting there. He hunted wild boar there, but his interest, though, is not just in a matter of fishing or hunting, but in terms of what it means for the future of Korea. Yeah. Would you like to say anything?
No, I'm good.
Okay. All right. All right. Then I guess we can go to the news, and there were some important primaries yesterday, and we'll get to that. But I really want to talk about this upcoming summit between North Korea and between North Korea and the U.S.
And Dennis Rodman?
And Dennis Rodman. Apparently it's going to be a three-way summit. Well, I don't know if we should laugh because you never know. God can work through anyone, all right? God can work through anyone. And if Kim Jong-un is a fan of Dennis Rodman, let him do his thing. We don't know. We don't know who God can work through, who God will work through. He can work through anyone. And maybe Dennis Rodman has a providential role. Can you imagine that?
No, but I'm a man of little faith sometimes.
Well, speaking of little faith, I'm losing faith in Trump. This talk about, during the Korean portion of today's King's Report, we read a opinion piece by a man who writes for one of the major newspapers in Korea. And he was pointing out that just a few weeks ago, just until recently, Trump was saying that if it's not going to be a good deal, if we can't get a good deal, I'm going to walk away. Or if it's not going to be a good meeting, the meeting won't happen at all. Mm-hmm. All right? If you can't, in other words, if you can't get North Korea to give up its nuclear weapons, I'm not even going to go there, this kind of thing. Mm-hmm. But now he's not saying that. Mm-hmm. Now, after meeting this international terrorist, the former North Korean spy chief, who is an international terrorist, now, of course, Kim Jong-un is an international terrorist too. So now he's saying, well, it'll take time, and maybe we can have a declaration that the Korean War is over, or at least he's sort of implying that. He hasn't really said that, but he's kind of implying that maybe sort of a declaration ending the war might be good, kind of saying, well, that would be historic, wouldn't it? And then kind of hinting that he'd like to receive the Nobel Peace Prize. I would like to make a plea to President Trump. Erase the words Nobel Peace Prize from your mind. You're not going to get it, all right? Obama was elected, and all he had to do was get elected, and he got the Nobel Peace Prize. And then he went off and started all kinds of wars, but they still allow him to keep it. But President Trump, you can stop 100 wars, and they still will not give you the Nobel Peace Prize. Let me just bring you into reality, all right? Because the Nobel Peace Prize is decided by basically the Norwegian Parliament. They appoint a committee, and the committee sort of recommends someone or something like that. But I think the final decision is made by the Norwegian Parliament, I think. And in the Norwegian Parliament, you don't have a lot of supporters, so just forget about it. The value of the Nobel Peace Prize has come down a lot anyway, all right? I mean, come on. You wouldn't buy stock in a company that's on its way out, would you?
But Kim Jong-un might win the Nobel Peace Prize.
Oh, I think they'll probably give it to Kim Jong-un and Moon Jae-in.
Dennis Rodman might.
And maybe even Dennis Rodman, yes. Yeah. But not Trump, not Trump. Right. So just get it out of your mind. I mean, that is, it doesn't exist as far as you're concerned. So please, don't even think about the Nobel Peace Prize. It's ridiculous that you would even think that. So I'm worried, and I'm losing faith in Trump. I'm afraid that if they have this meeting and they come up with a declaration saying that, there's no longer a state of war between our two countries, that will be a huge mistake for Trump, and I think that will be something that the United States will look back on with regret for many years to come. This is something that North Korea has been asking for decades, a peace treaty with the United States, or at least
which will be a really one-sided peace treaty.
Well,
basically, you now remove yourself from the South Korean.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. So because both China and North Korea, of course, their strategic objective is to get the U.S. forces removed from South Korea, and they've got them reduced a lot. I mean, when I was reporting from South Korea in the 80s, it was 43,000. Now now we've seen articles that it's 28,500. That's the number being used now. So already the troops have come down a lot in the last 30 years. And General Mattis is saying that, we're not. The withdrawal of U.S. troops is not going to be on the agenda for this meeting. That's probably true, but it doesn't have to be.
Right.
The U.S. troops are coming out anyway. Okay, I give them 5 years at the most, maybe 2 to 3 in the next 2 to 3 years. But no matter what scenario you think of, U.S. troops are going to be leaving South Korea, I think, within the next 5 years.
Even with the rise of China
especially with the rise of China
in the Pacific Rim.
Yes, especially with the rise of China, because I think Americans are now finding out that we have troops in 150 countries. It's like, are you kidding me? What are we doing? And and especially President Trump, he was skeptical about NATO, and he was skeptical about U.S. troops in South Korea from before he was a president, and he's sort of backtracked on NATO, but if given a chance, I think he would like to remove troops from South Korea. But so this idea of a peace treaty or a declaration of the end of hostilities, apparently this is something that Kim Dae-jung, former president of South Korea, started talking about, and President Roh Moo-hyun. So the leftist presidents in Korea have brought up this idea of a declaration of an end of hostilities. And if you do that, then the political pressure within South Korea for the removal of U.S. forces will increase dramatically, and it's going to, and I think it's going to increase in the U.S. as well. And that's why I think that U.S. troops are coming out. Strategically, they should be there. They need to be there for the sake of China. But the United States is not a military dictatorship. Henry Kissinger is not the dictator of the United States, as some South Koreans seem to assume. Because they always say, no. Especially the conservatives say, no, the U.S. troops are not here for North Korea, they're here for China. This is what the Pentagon keeps telling us. Okay, the Pentagon keeps telling you that, but the Pentagon is not the White House. Okay, the United States is not a military dictatorship. It's a democracy, in a good way and a bad way. It means that what the majority of the people vote for is what you're going to get, whether it is good for the country or bad for the country. And I don't think that a majority of the American people will support U.S. troops in South Korea for very much longer. And a majority of people in South Korea would not support U.S. military presence there for very much longer either. So the U.S. troops are coming out. They're coming out. 5 years at the most. So, I think a declaration of the end of hostilities or the declaration of end of the war would be a tremendous mistake. This is what North Korea has been wanting, and until now, U.S. Position has been that this can only be given if North Korea gives up its nuclear program. So for Trump to give that to North Korea without first having North Korea giving up its nuclear program would be a tremendous misstep, in my view. And I think I hope Trump, I think if he opens his eyes, if he gets that Nobel Peace Prize thing out of his mind, and this idea that I have to accomplish something before the midterms, get that out of your mind. Let the midterms go where they are. Go where they will. Just please don't make this huge misstep on the Korean Peninsula. Don't give them something for nothing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think he certainly is vulnerable to fame and recognition. I think that's perhaps one of his weak spots. He really loves media attention, and this kind of fame and glory and recognition might be one of his weaknesses that he might fall prey to.
Here we have a CNN article, or CNBC article. Putin is saying Trump is brave and mature for having this North Korea summit. Okay, Wendy. Okay, all right. Let's see what Putin has to say. Russian President Vladimir Putin praised his counterpart in the U.S., saying that a decision by President Donald Trump to set up a meeting with North Korea is, quote, brave and mature, unquote. Putin said he is expecting a positive outcome from the meeting between Trump and North Korean leader Kim Jong-un, due to take place in Singapore on June 12th. And it's only now 6 days away. Actually, in Singapore now, it's no, it's still the 6th, yeah. So I still hope that this meeting, a very brave and mature decision U.S. President Donald Trump has made to have direct contacts with North Korean leader Kim Jong-un, will take place, and we will all expect a positive outcome, Putin said in an interview with China Media Group published on the Kremlin website Tuesday. However, Putin added that it was, quote, a pity that our Western partners, the United States and unfortunately South Korea, have not stopped their military exercises and maneuvers that do nothing to aid de-escalation, unquote, of tensions in the region. The meeting between Trump and Kim, hailed as a domestic landmark in relations between the traditional enemies, was initially canceled by Trump due to what he called the open hostility from Pyongyang. But in a dramatic change of course, the president announced earlier this week that it was back on. So the cancel was good. The canceling, look what happened when canceled. You know, North Korea was saying bad things about Bolton and about Pence, and Trump said, okay, well, forget it. And then North Korea said, oh, no, we didn't mean it, please. You know, at that point, I thought, okay, Trump has got the initiative now. But now I think he's losing the initiative by sort of being sucked into this thing. Oh, it can't all be done in one meeting, and it has to be gradual, and it has to be step by step, and wouldn't it be nice if we just have a declaration of the end of war just to start things off? He's getting sucked into that, and he's losing the initiative. It's good for him to meet with Kim Jong-un, but he needs to go in there with the mindset that he had a couple months ago, or when this thing first started, so that even the day before he can cancel it, or even an hour before the plane takes off, Air Force One takes off, he can say, "Oh, I'm going to do something else. I'm going to go have a campaign rally in Ohio or something." If things are not going to work out, or even there, face to face with Kim Jong-un, he has to be able to just say, "Hey, you know what? This is not working," and leave the room, to stand up and leave and come back to America. He has to have that kind of a mindset if this meeting is going to be successful. If he gets sucked into the traditional diplomatic protocol of things, it's not going to work out. That's what I'm worried about.
North Korea has a history of just saying whatever to get what they want in the short term.
Yes. So that's what Putin is saying, and that does not give me much confidence. That right now, I'm not so sure about this meeting. Right now, I expect it's going to take place. I don't, because for it to be canceled, North Korea has to give Trump some kind of an excuse to cancel it, and I think North Korea now is being careful not to do that. Although they are doing some funny things. They are saying that they are asking the UN to help them repatriate some defectors to the South. So they're kind of doing some strange things, but they're being careful not to give Trump an excuse to cancel the meeting. China, of course, is the North Korea's coach behind all this, and at one point, I think China was trying to get North Korea to cancel this meeting, but do it so that the blame would go on the United States. But Trump sort of outmaneuvered them, and he canceled it before they got a chance to cancel it. And so now China's strategy seems to have changed to where okay, go ahead and have the meeting, but try to get Trump to agree to something that we've been wanting to get for all this time, like a declaration of the end of war, or the end of hostilities. I don't know. I hope Trump has something else up his sleeve, because things are not going well right now. Yeah. What do you think?
I don't know. I think it has to, if there's going to be reconciliation between North and South, it has to begin somewhere. So it depends on who has the upper hand in the negotiations.
Well, it has to begin somewhere. It has to begin with North Korea. It has to begin with North Korea giving up its nuclear
We know that's not going to happen.
Well, we know that that's not going to happen. So that's why I say Trump has to go in there with the idea of just coming out of just getting up from the table and walking out. Meanwhile, let's go through this article. This is Japan PM seeks Trump's assurances over North Korea in latest two-way chat. This was filed or updated 2 hours ago. Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe, seeking to draw on his close ties with President Donald Trump in talks on Thursday, will urge the U.S. leader not to forget Tokyo's security concerns in his drive for a historic deal with North Korean leader Kim Jong-un. I think the word historic also is going to make Trump run afoul here.
Yeah.
Abe has spoken to Trump 30 times since he became president, including 8 face-to-face meetings, and officials say Washington is well aware of Tokyo's stance towards Pyongyang. And Tokyo's stance towards Pyongyang is, listen, they've been kidnapping, or they in the past, they kidnapped our citizens. And North Korea actually used to do this. They would approach the Japanese coastline in small submarines, and they would go up on shore, and they would kidnap people and put them in the submarines and take them back to North Korea. And this happened several times. They were taken back to North Korea and then used as teachers for spies who would be then sent to Japan, and then through Japan, via Japan, they would infiltrate South Korea, or they would work in Japan. And this was going on for quite a while. And some of those people are still there or are unaccounted for. At one point, Japan insisted on, North Korea said, they're all dead. So, okay, well, at least send us whatever remains you have. And so they sent some bones, turned out to be dog bones. So Japan has a very strong stance against North Korea. At least the conservative administration in Japan has a very strong stance against North Korea. And also Japan and North Korea have never signed a peace agreement after the end of the colonization. Japan's colonization, or actually annexation of Korea, ended in August 1945. And South Korea signed a basic agreement with Japan in 1965 after 20 years. So after 20 years, diplomatic relations between Japan and South Korea were established. For 20 years, they did not have diplomatic relations. Japan and North Korea still don't have diplomatic relations and still have not signed any kind of an agreement on their relations following the end of Japanese annexation in 1945. So Japan and North Korea, they are very much, there's a very antagonistic relationship there. Here quoting Abe, through summits and telephone conversations with President Trump, we have closely liaised in our positions, and our positions are exactly the same, Abe told reporters before departing for Washington. Quote, ahead of this historic U.S.-North Korea summit, I will meet President Trump to coordinate in order to advance progress on the nuclear issue, missiles, and most importantly, the abductees issue. Abductees are the ones that got taken away in the submarines. He said, referring to the emotive matter of Japanese citizens kidnapped by Pyongyang's agents decades ago. So I hope when he meets Trump, he says, say to Trump, forget about the Nobel Prize. Forget about doing something historic, all right? Just go there, give your message to Kim Jong-un, and if he gives you any kind of lip at all, just get up and walk away. I hope that's what he says to President Trump. Still, concerns have simmered in Tokyo that Trump, his eye on November congressional elections, could cut a deal that would allow him to boast of protecting U.S. cities from nuclear attack, but leave Japan vulnerable to shorter-range missiles. I'm not even sure about protecting U.S. cities right now. Japan also fears Trump could eventually agree to reduce U.S. forces, military forces in South Korea, leaving Japan as a frontline state against the Korean Peninsula under heavy Chinese influence. Yeah, well, that's going to happen. Better get ready for it. That would mean Japan's constitution, diplomatic policies, and national security policies all will have to be totally reviewed for the completely new situation. Katsuyuki Kawai, a special advisor on foreign affairs to Abe, told Reuters. It would be a nightmare for Japan and also for the United States, he said. Trump suggested on Friday that the most tangible outcome of the June 12th summit could be the signing of a document to end the technical state of hostilities, 65 years after the Korean conflict ended with an armistice, not a peace treaty. See, that's what I'm afraid of. That's what Abe is afraid of. That's what a lot of people are afraid of right now. Trump also said he wanted to drop the term maximum pressure that his administration in Japan had used to describe an approach that combined tough economic sanctions with diplomacy and military threats from the U.S. president. The White House said on Monday that the U.S. policy had not changed. Japan has made clear that it will not provide economic assistance to North Korea until all three issues are resolved, including the abductees issue. Our positions toward the economic assistance is quite clear, a Japanese foreign ministry official told reporters, speaking on condition of anonymity. Abe, who has made resolving the abductees issue a keystone of his political career, will also likely seek reassurance that Trump will keep that on his agenda with Kim Jong-un after the president said he had not discussed human rights with North Korean envoy Kim Yong-chol at the White House last week. Kim Yong-chol being the ex-spy chief of North Korea, who has committed many international terrorist incidents. I think what Mr. Abe expects is that Trump will at least raise the issue with Kim Jong-un when they meet, said Tatsuo Kotani, a senior fellow at the Japan Institute of International Affairs. Japan could seek its own summit with the North Korean leader, depending on the outcome of his meeting with Trump. Abe's close ties with Trump have so far done little to insulate Japan from Washington's America First stance on trade. Trump is pressing Japan for a bilateral free trade agreement, while Japan insists multilateral deals work best. Japanese officials have declined to speculate on whether trade would join North Korea on the agenda at Thursday's talks, but White House spokeswoman Sarah Sanders told reporters that trade issues and other matters were expected to come up. So, yeah, I hope Abe is a pretty sensible guy, and I hope that he can kind of coach Trump. I don't know if that's possible, but apparently somebody's coaching Trump because we see he's changing.
It's probably Bolton and Mattis and. But Bolton
I don't think it's Bolton.
Bolton's a strong man, right?
Yeah.
So he's not going to coach that.
Yeah. But maybe Mattis, maybe Mattis, maybe Kelly. I don't know. I don't know who's doing it, but someone is changing President Trump, and I don't like it. I don't like it at all. And right now, I don't know if this meeting is going to produce good results. I don't know any longer if it should happen. If Trump goes into it with that kind of mindset of I want to sign something, give me something to sign. I've got a pen in my hand, give me something to sign. If he goes in with that kind of an attitude, maybe, I don't know, but Father will decide. But we need to pray. We really need to pray that Father will be in control of
we're coming to that 70-year mark.
Yes, we are coming to the 70-year mark, yes. And
something's got to give.
This is a very pivotal moment in the history of Northeast Asia, and I think history of the world. It is a pivotal moment, and because it's a pivotal moment, it's important that President Trump watch his step, because one misstep can send us all tumbling down a cliff. CNN, let's see what CNN has to say. Trump's North Korea summit raises deja vu concerns. President Trump has thrown another twist. Let's see here. When was this published? It keeps jumping around. Okay, this was published a few days ago. 4 days ago, but let's look at it anyway. President Trump has thrown another twist into the North Korean summit saga, announcing he will meet with leader Kim Jong-un on June 12th after all, and raising some concern that history may be repeating itself. Trump met in the Oval Office on Friday with former North Korean spy chief, sent him off with a smile and a handshake. The prospect of a summit of the preemptive war, instead of the preemptive war, now CNN is doing strange things to me. They're giving me some pop-ups. Here we go. Instead of the preemptive war that many feared just a few months ago, drew praise. But in comments to reporters on South Lawn afterward, Trump set down markers that seemed to shift the U.S. position in ways analysts said could undermine Washington's leverage. Trump told reporters he would not add extra sanctions on Pyongyang and would no longer use the term maximum pressure, the international sanctions regimen designed to squeeze North Korea. So apparently this spy chief was pretty convincing. I don't know. Or that letter, that you see that big, huge letter? It was about this big, the envelope, about this big, you know. Maybe Kim Jong-un says, please, please, Daddy Trump. I don't know what's going on here. I'm very concerned. But, you know, lots of things can happen. Lots of things can happen. You know, when on Monday, I think we talked about the change in the...
There's the letter.
Okay. Yeah, there's the letter, yeah. That is a big Christmas card, I tell you. I don't know if Hallmark makes cards that big. Maybe it's one of those birthday cards, you know? We've had some birthday cards that are about this big, right?
Yeah, they're handcrafted. Yeah.
Handcrafted, okay, yeah. So
maybe Dictator Kim made that letter for Donald Trump.
Maybe everybody in North Korea signed it. I don't know. But on Monday, we were talking about the change in the military leadership in North Korea, and I speculated, and this is just my speculation, that that although Reuters was saying that, you know, he was putting in younger people who were more likely to be good at international relations, you know, instead of just drinking all the time. But I speculated something different, that I think Kim Jong-un is trying to preempt a coup d'etat while he is gone by putting in new leaders. Because if you have, you know, if you have a unit that has had the same leader for a long time, then they're likely to follow that leader no matter what. So if the guy says, okay, it's time for the coup d'etat, let's take over the country, they're likely to follow him. Whereas they change the leader and put in a new guy, that's less likely to happen, I think. So I think that's one reason that Kim Jong-un may have changed his military leadership, the three top positions of the leadership just before going to this summit. So things can happen in North Korea as well, you know. And North Korea may make that misstep, or China may make the misstep, and I think we don't really know what's going to be happening during the summit. But it's a pivotal moment. A lot of things can happen, and I think we just have to pray that the True Father can be in control and bring good out of this. Because as you said, 70 years, this is the 70th year. September 9th, 1948 was when the North Korean government was established. So some people in the Korean sanctuary are saying North Korea will fall before September 9th this year. I don't know if it's exactly that way. Sometimes God's timetable isn't exactly, you know.
Well, we could see a coup next week.
We could see one, maybe one. I don't know.
When he's out of town, right? That could be the time.
We don't know. We don't know.
And he'll have to stay in Singapore. Maybe ushered off to France.
But, you know, strange things like, you know, North Korea, right now, they were worried about who's going to pay their hotel bill. Did you see that?
Yes. That's embarrassing.
I mean, Trump could put it on his own card. But, unfortunately, there are laws that would prevent that. The economic sanctions prevent that, actually. But Trump could,
as he could give an executive order to bypass that.
I think I don't know, it's Treasury Department or something like that. But anyway, yeah. So.
There's ways around that.
But yeah, I mean, but Trump could just pull out his own personal credit card, put it on that. You know,
$6,000 a night, no problem.
Well, it's not just one room though. They're renting
It's a
several
whole
rooms at
entourage,
the
yeah.
6,000 a night, I guess. So, yeah.
Strange times.
But I hope that Kim Jong-un does get the message that President Trump's nuclear button is bigger than his nuclear button. Two guys getting together and comparing the sizes of their buttons. This is not going to go well. Oh, boy. All right. Let's take a break now, and we'll come back with more news, other news after this.
Folks, and look at what I've got here today. My God, take a look at this. This is a BFR in 454 Casul with an octagonal barrel, magna porting, micarta grips. And look at that, it even has my initials on it, JM. Look at that thing of beauty, my God. Pop open the cartridge insertion door. And look at that cylinder spin. The finest revolvers in the world. That's a cannon. That's a cannon. Oh, man.
Firearms, Magnum Research, and Auto Ordnance. The Car Firearms Group. With a diverse product line that blends American craftsmanship with cutting-edge technology. It's no secret why gun enthusiasts choose Car Firearms Group. From the Desert Eagle and Baby Desert Eagle made famous by Hollywood. The history of the 1911 and the Tommy gun. To the best in compact concealed carry. Car Firearms Group is not only the first name in personal defense, it's a name that has earned the respect of gun enthusiasts around the world. Concealment, innovative technology, value, accuracy, and history. Car Firearms Group. Made in the USA. Visit car.com today.
Welcome back to the King's Report for Wednesday, June 6th, 2018. Tim Elder and Greg Knowles sitting in for the second king of Chinook, Youngjin Moon. And let's look at what's on Drudge this morning. Yesterday there were primaries in a number of important states. I think 8 or so, right? Anyway, but everybody's very much interested in what's going on in California with the, especially the governor's race there. And that's the main headline on Drudge this morning. So let's take a peek at that. San Francisco Chronicle, Gavin Newsom, John Cox to face off in fall California governor's race. Of course, Newsom is the Democrat and Cox is the Republican. Lieutenant Governor Gavin Newsom, the former San Francisco mayor, who has spent nearly 8 years as understudy to Governor Jerry Brown. Finally, Jerry Brown's getting out of politics. I mean, this guy was in politics for what? I mean, come on. He was governor when we were in college, right?
Yeah.
Wasn't he? What does he?
But this guy, just the opening sentence here is frightening. He was the former San Francisco mayor.
Yes.
And an understudy of Jerry Brown.
Brown, yes.
This is really
secured a
this
spot.
Guy might be worse than Jerry Brown.
Yeah, secured a spot Tuesday night in the November general election to succeed the termed out governor. Oh wow, I guess they have term limits. Okay, but I'll bet Jerry Brown comes back
somehow. Maybe as president.
Maybe as president.
Whenever California succeeds and becomes their own nation, he will be the president.
Yes. He will face John Cox, a little-known Republican businessman who moved to California only a few years ago. This is the San Francisco Chronicle, right? Only a few years ago. I mean,
he's an outsider.
He's a first-generation Californian, all right? A little-known Republican businessman, all right? And has lost 4 previous runs for elective office. They really give his a negative resume, don't they? Including one for president. President John Cox? California
probably as a libertarian or something.
I see. Outnumbered GOP voters coalesced around Cox after President Trump tweeted an endorsement of him late in the campaign. He was running second in Tuesday's primary with 26% of the vote, behind Newsom's 34%.
Which is not bad.
That's not bad.
Not too bad.
Mm-hmm. For a little-known
right.
Republican businessman who moved to California a few years ago and has lost 4 previous runs for elective office, that's actually quite good.
Pretty good, yeah.
Newsom's fellow Democrat, Antonio Villaraigosa.
And how many times did Nixon lose before he became he's not necessarily a good example.
But, well, no, I mean, Nixon, his second term, he won every state except Massachusetts. Mm-hmm. Yes, against McGovern. Mm. Yes.
Yeah. But he lost quite a few times
yeah, he did, yes.
finally winning.
Well, he was, that's right. He was vice president under Eisenhower, and then he lost to Kennedy. He had a
losing streak there for a while.
Yeah. Newsom's fellow Democrat Antonio Villaraigosa, a former state assembly speaker and ex-mayor of Los Angeles, was locked in a battle for third with GOP Assemblyman Travis Allen of Orange County, but only the top 2 finishers advanced to the November 6th general election, and both Villaraigosa and Allen were far behind Cox. Bringing up the back of the pack of major candidates were Democratic State Treasurer John Chiang and Democratic former state schools chief Dalian Easton. Fox will face steep odds, of course, in a state where only 1 in every 4 voters is Republican. 2/3 of the voters disapprove of Trump, and a Republican hasn't been elected governor since Arnold Schwarzenegger in 2006. And Schwarzenegger was an international movie star with near universal name recognition. More than half of likely voters had no opinion of Cox in a nonpartisan Berkeley IGS survey released last week. Cox was virtually tied with Allen in many polls until last week when he got help from 2 different people, Trump and Newsom. So that's the California governor's race. That's coming up in November. And between now and November, I'm sure we'll hear a lot about that. And then Drudge has a link to live updates, and we'll go there in a minute.
Trump's tweet was, California finally deserves a great governor who understands borders, crime, and lowering taxes.
Yes.
So those are the key issues that John Cox will need to focus on.
Yes. And, the traditional sort of Democratic base may be shifting. with the minorities.
Mm-hmm.
More and more minorities I think, maybe coming to realize that gun control, for example, puts them at a disadvantage, and that gun control has a very strong element of a white privilege, and that Democrats have not been serving them well over the last several decades. So we don't know. We'll see what happens between now and November.
There's a mass exodus happening out of
Yes.
California because the taxes are stifling.
Unfortunately, I think it's
And,
the conservatives, who maybe relative conservatives, who are leaving. I don't know.
Possibly, it'd be
Yes.
good to read up on that. But I would imagine also a lot of middle class people who just can't afford paying,
Yes.
$7,000, $10,000, $15,000 in taxes, property taxes, and they move to Nevada where there's virtually no taxes. So I think Cox could really, do well in this race.
Okay, so then elsewhere in the news here, world peace deteriorates, partisanship damages U.S. score, Rodman role at North Korea summit, Singapore gears up for greatest show on earth.
Just think, Rodman, Kim, and Trump. I mean,
Well, Rodman and Kim will do all the talking. I mean, Trump would just be sitting there. What are they talking about? I think Rodman and Kim speak the same language.
do they?
Yes.
Basketball?
Yeah. That'll be interesting, yes.
This is really a unique time to have such three characters in one summit.
Yes, Rodman can ask Kim to do him a solid once again. I think that was the phrase he used before.
Do a solid?
Yeah,
That's
do
the
me a
handshake.
solid, yes. Justify favorite in bid for Triple Crown. This is the horse racing. Facebook gave data to Chinese firm flagged threat by USA. Special access. Google Schmidt in Cuba to meet a new communist leader. Boy, Facebook and Google really
Getting cozy with the left.
they're really are they? I hate to call them anti-American, but seems to be anti-American.
Well, they're selling their soul to the devil, for money.
Yes, they are.
Basically,
Yeah.
to get access to, more customers. They're making very dangerous deals.
Turkey students go on trial over terror propaganda. Nicaragua political crisis descends into dark days. Let's look at that, because not enough of it has been said about Nicaragua.
Yeah.
We've been receiving reports from our contact in Nicaragua, our sanctuary contact there, but very little has been in the media. This is Wall Street Journal. A surge of violence has snuffed out economic activity and dimmed prospects to resolve revolt against longtime leader Daniel Ortega. Wow, Jerry Brown and Daniel Ortega. These are two people who just don't go away, right?
Both leftist.
Yes. A surge of violence has snuffed out economic activity and dimmed prospects to peacefully resolve a political crisis here that began as protests against tax increases and turned into a revolt against Nicaragua's longtime leader. They can't say dictator, can they? Longtime leader Daniel Ortega. Since mid-April, more than 100 people have been killed in confrontations with police during mass protests and what human rights groups say are paramilitary gangs aligned with Mr. Ortega's government. Among them were, China had the Red Guards, and basically, I think Venezuela has its paramilitary gangs, and I think we see this that communist governments have these paramilitary gangs that go around carrying out the will of the government, basically, to destroy and kill. Police in the predominantly indigenous city of Masaya this past weekend, including a 15-year-old protester who witnessed say was executed by a policewoman. On Tuesday, violence flared in the quaint colonial city of Granada, home to hundreds of American retirees.
I bet you they regret retiring down there.
Yeah. We are going through very dark days, said Humberto Belli, a former education minister. The people are out in the street demanding that Ortega leave, but he has shown an unexpected ability to kill. Why is it unexpected? I mean, the Sandinistas have always shown that they're very good at killing. We see more blood every day, 3, 4, 5 people killed on a daily basis. This has no end. The Organization of American States on Tuesday approved a mildly worded resolution calling for an immediate end of the violence and asking all parties to participate in peaceful dialogue. The resolution, co-sponsored by the U.S. and Nicaragua, was much weaker than declarations made Monday by Secretary of State Mike Pompeo, who accused Nicaraguan police and armed pro-government groups of killing dozens of protesters. It was a wishy-washy resolution. Nicaragua demands more urgent attention from the OAS than it's given, said Michael Shifter, president of the Inter-American Dialogue, a Washington-based think tank. The U.S. ambassador to the OAS, Carlos Trujillo, said the OAS declaration marks the beginning of the organization's engagement with the grave situation in Nicaragua. He blasted the government, saying it has committed grave crimes against peaceful protesters. Nicaragua's government denies links to paramilitary groups and says the unrest is the result of an opposition plot to overthrow it. There you go. Left-wing conspiracy theories. Police haven't addressed the alleged police shooting of the teen. Nicaragua is committed to stability amidst this wave of criminal violence. Stability, that's what China talks about, right? Stability. Yeah, because when the Communist Party is in power, they want stability. In other words, they want to maintain their power. Amidst this wave of criminal violence generated by certain groups of the opposition which conspire from the darkness to terrorize families, Luis Alvarado, Nicaragua's representative to the OAS, said Monday. Mr. Ortega, a former guerrilla leader who played a central role in the overthrow of the Somoza family dictatorship in 1979, was reelected by a landslide in 2016 after 16 years out of power. He ran largely unopposed after maneuvering to ban any real contenders. Yeah, there we go. That's the way you do it. Until recent spate of violence, Nicaragua had enjoyed far lower levels of violent crime than its Central American neighbors, El Salvador and Honduras. Mr. Ortega also had been able to deliver high economic growth and apparent political stability. Most Nicaraguans appeared content or resigned to the quid pro quo until now. This is what happens because God has given us an innate desire for freedom. Mm-hmm. He gave us freedom, he gave us creativity, and the communists just can't suppress that. Satan just cannot get rid of that, no matter how much he may try. So eventually that comes out. It comes out, you know. And I think part of the problem may be that Ortega, it says here, gave a certain degree of economic prosperity, was it? Was reelected, apparent political stability, deliver high economic growth, yeah. That's the problem. And North Korea, of course, knows that lesson. You cannot give high economic growth, because if they do, the people are going to revolt. That was Ortega's mistake. And Kim Jong-un knows this. This is why when Pompeo says, yeah, we'll give you, what is it, how many billions, or something like that? We'll make you as rich as South Korea. North Korea says, no! We don't want that. You know, we want the status quo. Stability. This is what we want. All right. But many Nicaraguans say they are fed up with Mr. Ortega and his wife, the unpopular vice president, Rosario Murillo, who they say have usurped democratic institutions and snuffed out political opposition. Government plans to confiscate large tracts of land to build a commercial waterway to rival the Panama Canal have cost the Ortegas real support. Wow. That's pretty ambitious.
Central planning.
Nicaragua was never really seen as the route for a canal, was it? I don't think so.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. Well, central planning. Yeah. Managua and the country are no longer calm. Ortega has to go now, said Claudia Gillen, a 19-year-old university student. The country's capital of Managua, a sprawling city of modest malls, street vendors, and office towers mixed with open pastures, is now largely deserted. Wow. Shops are closed and vandalized. Few people venture out at night. Walls are covered with graffiti calling Mr. Ortega a murderer. Okay, that message is finally getting out. A group of police officers stand guard by a monument to the late Venezuelan leader, Hugo Chavez, erected by Mr. Ortega after protesters tried to knock it down during recent demonstrations. Throughout Nicaragua, barricades have sprung up, blocking roads and snarling traffic and making the key Pan-American highway that links many of the country's cities impassable. Tourism has been hit hard, hotel managers say, with occupancies at major hotels plunging and some international airlines paring back flights. Economic activity has plummeted. People fear leaving their homes, said Pamela Venega, a waitress at a restaurant in one of Managua's largest malls. Analysts say the surge in violence has set back any hope of a peaceful resolution. A dialogue between Mr. Ortega's government and the opposition, sponsored by the influential Catholic Church, has been shelved. Nicaragua's business class, which until recently worked closely with Mr. Ortega, is demanding new elections. My sense is that the situation will continue to deteriorate and the government will continue its repression, said Eric Farnsworth, who heads the Washington office of think tank Council of the Americas. One possibility, Mr. Farnsworth said, a civil insurrection in Masaya and other provincial cities in a historical echo of the Sandinista revolution that overthrew the late dictator Anastasio Somoza. Mr. Ortega has hunkered down, perhaps taking a page from Venezuela's beleaguered President Nicolas Maduro, who has survived an economic meltdown, deadly street protests, and world condemnation. Few believe Mr. Ortega and Ms. Murillo will step down or agree to hold early elections. Last month, a tense confrontation with angry students at the opening of the now suspended peace dialogue. Mr. Ortega recalled Nicaragua's history of 20th century civil wars that left 50,000 dead. He warned students to put an end to the irrational and diabolical violence that has exploded in our country. Mr. Ortega said his government held no political prisoners and that there are no protesters unaccounted for. That's because you killed them all, shouted one student. One large question mark hanging over the regime's survival: can Mr. Ortega depend on the Nicaraguan army to defend him if called upon? The army is key. This is why the new Constitution does not allow a standing army, because this is the role that armies play again and again and again, because this is a large group of disciplined men and sometimes women, which dictators can call upon.
They're paid by the government.
Yes, they're paid by the government, yeah. And so, as we see in Venezuela, too, it's basically the army that's keeping the president in power. In North Korea, too, it's the military, primarily the army, that is keeping that regime propped up. So that's why the new Constitution does not allow a standing army, because it takes the sovereignty away from the people. We see
Jefferson,
it here.
yeah, Jefferson said the government should fear the people.
Not the other way around, right? This guy says the army is likely to repress if ordered to do so. 4 former top Sandinista generals have been prominent participants in the anti-Ortega marches. Mr. Ortega's brother, Humberto, a former Sandinista defense minister, has publicly expressed concern about how Mr. Ortega is managing the crisis. Last month, isn't it interesting that Ortega is up and now the head of the NRA, what is the new head of the NRA?
Oliver North.
Oliver North is the players. It's wow! Is the players all back? Jerry Brown is he's going out, of course. But if someone were to be in a coma for 30 years and just waking up, except for the president, he would say, "Oh yeah, nothing's changed." Last month, the spokesman for Nicaragua's army told news agency AFP that the army would not repress anti-government protesters. The crisis comes just weeks before Mr. Ortega is scheduled to celebrate the 39th anniversary of the triumph of the Sandinista Revolution.
Triumph.
Yeah.
What a triumph.
The reclusive Mr. Ortega usually gives a speech as tens of thousands of Sandinista supporters march in a parade. Ms. Murillo is widely believed to be the power behind the throne in Nicaragua. Analyst says she has alienated many of Mr. Ortega's old Sandinista comrades who resent her sway over him. Ms. Murillo didn't immediately respond to a request for comment. I'll bet she did. She probably commented just that, it wasn't printable. An esoteric poet and believer of mystic spiritualism and religious syncretism, the eccentric Ms. Murillo always wears a multitude of turquoise rings. She is responsible for putting up about 140 trees of life. Whoa. Metal structures painted in vivid colors which light up at night across Managua. The trees of life, wow. The structure is derisively called, Rosario stakes have become, a slang word for Rosario sticks, have become a favorite target of protesters. Many have been torn down or burned over the past 2 months. What has become clear is that the Ortega's highly personalized brand of governance has served to focus the personal repudiation and deep frustration of various sectors with them, said John Freely, a former U.S. ambassador to Panama. All right, so that's the end of the story. It was a long story, but it was good because the mainstream media has really ignored the crisis in Nicaragua, because Nicaragua is a leftist government, and
That's right.
they keep hoping and praying, things are going to turn out okay. We don't have to really have to give them any bad publicity. But I guess now it's finally come to the point where at least Wall Street Journal is coming out and reporting
There's
on
so
the
many
situation.
prime examples, isn't there, of wonderfully successful communist governments throughout the world that
Yeah.
are thriving and doing well. I mean, my goodness.
Well,
if you-
China will tell you that they're doing well.
They're doing well, but it's only through the strong hand of government
Yes.
that keeps people at bay.
Yes, they will say that, look how many hundreds of millions of people we've pulled out of poverty. But of course, out of 1.3 billion, a few hundred million is still not a lot. And also, China is repressing, and right now, the Chinese people are kind of acquiescing to this quid pro quo. They had their chance in 1989. We talked about that day before yesterday with the Tiananmen Square. They had their chance in 1989, and the government sent in 100,000 troops to kill how many we don't know. But I think the day is coming for China as well, because as the Chinese people become more and more affluent, they want their freedom. They want to be able to access the World Wide Web, not just the China wide,
not the intranet,
not the
of
not the
China.
internet. Yeah, they want to be able to access that, and right now Google and Facebook are kind of conspiring with China to help them with their repression. But I think even that will come to an end. So eventually,
Well, like you said, people crave freedom, and
Yes.
it's an innate godly desire
yes,
to do so.
yes,
And no government can suppress that.
that's right. Can't stop us from wanting to breathe air or eating food.
Yep.
Can't stop me from wanting to eat ice cream. Freedom, yeah. Oh my! Did I do a David Hogg again? I'm sorry.
Except he's not saying freedom.
Richard, let's see. Richard Simmons, that was yesterday. Okay, man sues CVS for babbling to his wife about secret Viagra use. Busted. All right. I hope they have fun. Okay. Trump to face Lion's Den at G7 summit. Does anyone care about the G7 these days? World's oldest person still wishes she was dead as she turns 129. Wow. That's a long time to live. Teacher accused of taking bribes in exchange for good grades. Let's see. Volcano stops time in Guatemala. Yeah, so things are really happening, aren't they? So Venezuela, if it's not
Yeah, it seems like
volcanoes,
a lot of,
it's
right. Central South
uprising
America
of-
going through a lot of difficulties.
either
right
the
now.
volcanoes are uprising or the people are uprising. Yeah, in Hawaii, apparently, not last night, but the night before night, just in one night, hundreds of houses were
that
destroyed.
right?
Yeah.
Wow.
I was watching those videos this morning. It was an area where houses are more closely situated, and the lava just went through and wiped out hundreds of houses in one night. That happened the night before last, according to the news reports out of Hawaii. But yeah, I can't stop that. And Trump scraps Eagles' visit to avoid low turnout science anthem. Well, I think Trump, President Trump, he said, if the whole team's not going to come, if you're going to send less than 10 people out of the whole team, then it's not worth my time.
Well, it's also a public relations disaster.
Yeah,
The media will pounce all over that
Yeah.
for weeks and weeks
yeah.
on what a low turnout this is
Yeah, right.
and make the president look bad. So
Yeah.
I think President Trump probably knows that.
And he had another event honoring the U.S. military instead of that. Schultz, Howard Schultz, the now former CEO of Starbucks, looks like more and more like he's going to run for president, and now he's saying Democrats have shifted too far to the left. How are you going to pay for these things? So he's doing what kind of this candidate did in Pennsylvania, the Democrat who ran basically on gun rights and many things that Republicans like and the independent voters like, and he won that way. Lamb, right?
Lamb, yeah.
Yeah, in
Western
Western
PA.
Pennsylvania, yeah. So it looks like that's going to be Howard Schultz's strategy, and that may be an effective strategy. We'll have to see. He may.
Of course, Schultz has gotten a lot of bad press recently with Starbucks.
Well, that's why he resigned, I guess.
Yeah.
But we'll see. Because there's enough time between now and 2020 that he can overcome that kind of association with Starbucks, I think. I think he's probably setting out to kind of run in a more middle-of-the-road. He may not get the Democratic nomination that way. That's the problem. Normally, a Democratic candidate needs to run on the left during the primaries and then shift to the center during the general election. But he's starting out in the center, so I don't know about that.
He might be too much of a businessman to successfully get the Democratic nod.
Too much of a capitalist, yes.
Yes. He's a very successful capitalist.
Well, another article in the Wall Street Journal, but this is an important one. Social Security expected to dip into its reserves this year. Hey, guys, it's coming.
It's coming.
It's a Ponzi scheme to start out with. Yeah.
A lot of us haven't started to collect yet.
I'm collecting.
Are you collecting?
Yes, because when you're in a Ponzi scheme, you got to get.
It's all about timing.
You got to get while the getting's good. You got to take as much as you can while you're. Hey, don't worry, guys.
But you're not taking. You're actually getting back what you put in.
Yes. That's right.
So
yes,
it's
and
people like me that will be too late.
I was overseas for most of my life, so
Right.
I'm not getting a lot. Don't worry. But anyway, what I get, don't worry. Thank you very much for your money. It'll be used for a very good purpose. The Social Security program's cost will exceed its income this year for the first time since 1982.
And this is just the beginning of the boomer.
Yeah, that's right. Because
cash-in.
that's right.
Yeah.
Forcing the program to dip into its nearly $3 trillion trust fund to cover benefits. That trust fund, I think a lot of that trust fund has been lent to Congress or to other purposes.
Yeah, I don't think it's really there.
I don't know if it's actually there.
It's not actually there.
I'd like to see the bank account. I don't think it's. I don't think the cash is actually there.
This is a shell game.
Yeah. This is 3 years sooner than expected a year ago. Well, guess what? Partly due to lower economic growth projections, according to the latest annual report the trustees of Social Security and Medicare released Tuesday. The program's income comes from tax revenue and interest from its trust fund.
Didn't they collect the largest tax revenue in history or something that last year under Trump?
Yeah.
With the booming economy?
Yes.
What happened? I don't understand this paragraph here, this statement.
The trust fund will be depleted in 2034, and Social Security will no longer be able to pay its full scheduled benefits unless Congress takes action, which it will not, to shore up the program's finances. I can assure you, they will not. Without any changes, recipients then would receive only about 3/4 of their scheduled benefits from incoming tax revenues. The report also said that.
So what's the answer? Is kill off the old people.
Yes. That is
through pharmaceuticals and through other means.
That is apparently the only solution that is actually workable. The report also said that Medicare's hospital insurance fund would be depleted in 2026, 3 years earlier than anticipated in last year's report. Absent changes, the program then would be able to handle 91% of costs. Well, so the projection has been reduced by 3 years since last year.
Yeah, that's extreme.
If it's now next year, if it's reduced by another 3 years, and the next year another 3 years, pretty soon we're all going to be in. So, hey, don't depend on Social Security, all right?
I'm sure the government will come up with a program to take care of you, Tim.
Well, I'm not depending on the government. I'm just taking Social Security because it's there, but if it were not there, I would still be okay.
No, if Social Security goes away,
Oh.
a lot of people are going to be living on the streets,
Oh, yeah.
you know.
Yes.
And they'll, you know,
Yes.
it won't be a pretty scene.
Yes. But I think if they're living on the streets.
The Starbucks will be filled up.
That's
even
right.
more.
That's right. That's right. Starbucks. They'll be living.
Clean bathrooms.
Yes, in Starbucks, yes. But they'll be living in California.
California, yeah.
Yes.
That's true.
Yes.
We're safe here.
We're safe here. It's cold here.
Yeah.
It's cold here. you
Right.
know?
If you
It's
try to live
49
on,
degrees
if
right
you live
now.
on the streets here, you're not going to live very long.
Yes, they'll go to California to live there, yes. And Florida, too, I suspect. And Hawaii, yes. Hawaii, as long as the lava doesn't catch them.
You got to get there first.
Yeah. Okay. Japan, Dronebrella promises hands-free sun cover. Okay. That sounds like something the Japanese would come up with. That's good. Welcome to the scariest movie of the year. I'm not going to go there. I don't even want to know about it. I hate scary movies.
Me too.
MIT researchers create AI psychopath Norman, maker of fearsome animal robots, slowly emerge from stealth. Yes, the Second King has been worrying about that. Yep, it's coming. Shock, decapitated cat-like. Let's not do that. Communist rightist leader walks to police station after clothes stolen. Okay. Animals busy having conversations all around us, say scientists. Now, this is true. I recently read a book that talks about dogs, communication by dogs. And this book was by a dog trainer in Scandinavia somewhere, was saying that dogs are always communicating, just that we don't understand them. But in this book was actually teaching teaching us dog language, actually. You know, when a dog does this is what it means. When a dog does that, this is what it's trying to say, this kind of thing. You know, and how you can communicate with dogs also. Yeah. So, yeah, not just dogs, but I can see they have a picture of two bears shaking hands here, and they looks like they're like, hey, you took my fish. No, I didn't. I think that's what they're saying. Yeah, I think, and the book made this point that the dog language is actually universal. Chinese dogs and American dogs can communicate, I guess.
We had 4 puppies over at the farm the other night.
Yeah.
And,
Congratulations.
Yeah, and they were 4 distinct breeds. You know, very different from each other, but they just had the greatest time just playing and
Oh, look,
running
it's 8
around.
o'clock. Oh my goodness, we have to stop. We're having fun, but we have to stop now. People want to go have breakfast. I want to go have breakfast.
You don't think they're eating breakfast while they're listening?
Oh, they wouldn't do that. All right, let's call it quits here. Thank you very much for joining us this morning. Thank you, Greg, for coming in, and thank you all for your tuning in live or later on by video. I appreciate that very much. And the King will be back tomorrow morning with his regular broadcast at 5 a.m. So God bless, Godspeed, and may his kingdom come.